What's up, everybody? Justin Nault here with today. We are talking all about gut health, which I know is going to make many of you very, very exciting because that can be a extremely confusing topic, especially for people just coming into the health and wellness space. And I have an absolute expert on the show. My guest today is Tina Anderson, founder of Just Thrive Probiotics. And as you guys know, I have been preaching about Just Thrive for quite some time, and you get a discount on it as members of I Am Clovis and all the great things. So we're going to dig into why this product is so great. And we're going to talk overall gut health. So please welcome to the show, Tina Anderson. Tina, welcome.
Hi, Justin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
You're very welcome. I am thrilled to have you. And what I want to do in the beginning here is just teach people, because what I love is obviously like we met through networking, different entrepreneurs and all these things. And I just love getting people's stories of how they went from just what I say, like our average Joe years to somehow being thrust into this incredible like health and wellness space. So I want to talk about your background and what basically led you to Just Thrive.
Yeah. Okay. It's actually an interesting journey. I started out as an attorney. I did litigation for many years. And then just when I started to have children, I decided I didn't want that high stress and never being home with them job. And so I was able to take my legal skills and work into our family pharmaceutical business, where my husband and my mother and father also worked too. And so while we were in the pharmaceutical business, I was able to be general counsel, and I was able to really understand the pharmaceutical industry. And it was really fun when we started because we thought, oh my God, we're really helping people. We're saving people. We're, providing these really life-saving medications to people. But as we got more and more in the business, we really started to see the abuses in the industry. And we started to see the overprescribing of drugs, the rampant overprescribing of drugs, really. And then we had one situation where we won a huge contract, a huge bid for one of the largest hospital systems in the country. And the pharmaceutical rep came into our office and he gave my husband a high five. He's like, "This is awesome. We just won this bid. Now it's my job to go into the doctor's office, all these cardiologists' office, and tell them to lower the number that they prescribe this cholesterol drug for." And we were like, "Are you kidding?" And I mean, a part of me was shocked, but then another part of me was like, well, yeah, we're seeing this all over and over again. And we see it with our relatives. We saw, one particular relative went on one pharmaceutical, and the next thing you know, within 8 months, she's on 12 different, pharmaceuticals. It's like when you have something for stomach issues, and then you start developing joint pain. Then you take something for joint pain, it starts to develop, you have a skin rash. Then you take something for a skin rash, and then you start having, some mental issues of some sort, anxiety, depression. And so we just saw that they were just treating the symptoms and not really getting to the root cause of the problem. And so both my husband and I are very deep thinkers. We read a lot of Norman Vincent Peale and Wayne Dyer, and we just decided we need to do our life's work. We're not doing our life's work. And so we dug into research, and we surrounded ourselves with some pretty incredible experts out there. We started learning more about gut health. And this was just shortly after the Human Microbiome Project was launched by the National Institutes of Health. And it was incredible. I mean, we were able to find out that, now we know more about gut health than we ever knew before. And I think a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, a lot of, being at the right place at the right time, we were actually offered the exclusive rights to these spore-based bacillus probiotic strains through London University. And from then, the rest is history. It's been so far the best career journey I've ever been on, just helping people and seeing people getting to the root cause of their issues. It's been amazing.
That's incredible. And I love that you got to where you're at. I love when this happens for people. And I've had this discussion actually with a lot of like functional medicine practitioners, because it sounds like a lot of people, you got into like a pharmaceutical company or a healthcare company and you genuinely think you're doing good. You're like, we're helping people, we're saving lives. Or it's like women like Dr. Kelly Brogan has talked a lot about this, how she's like, I just woke up one day after like 20 years of conventional medical practice and was like, I'm not healing anybody. Like no one's getting healed. And now you're in a position where you're genuinely helping people heal themselves, really,
Exactly. It's been amazing.
That's awesome. So I have the first question I want to jump into here is basically, like you said, I love that you bring up the Human Microbiome Project and all that, because I try to be honest with people. Everybody is always talking about gut health and asking me questions about gut health. And I pretty regularly say, like, listen, this really is cutting edge. Like, as much as we do know about the gut now, it's still, there's a giant mystery there as well. It's the same as like genetics. I try to tell people, I'm like, what we know about genetics, like 97% of our DNA is called like junk DNA. You know, we don't really know. So when I get to talk to somebody like you, I really want to talk about the cutting edge, like what's happening right now. Because I've seen these conversations happen on different podcasts and stuff where people like, are probiotics useless? Do probiotics work and all that? And what I love about Just Thrive is you guys really focus on studies and research. So just in terms of 2019, what's floating around that seems to be really cutting edge that you're excited about?
Yeah. Well, we have, like you said, we've done a ton of research. One of the most compelling research studies that was done on the strains in Just Thrive is a leaky gut study. So we actually published the study. It was actually in August of 2017, but the study was showing that these strains are actually stopping the LPS toxins from seeping into the bloodstream. And so basically leaky gut, I'm sure most of your listeners already know this, but leaky gut is exactly what it sounds like. It's the tight junctions within your intestinal lining that are coming apart, and basically the toxins from your gut or food particles from your gut that are not problematic when they're in your gut start to seep into your bloodstream, where they become very problematic. And so the study on the strains in Just Thrive actually showed a 42% reduction in that LPS toxin from seeping into the bloodstream. And that was only over 30 days. And that was only, there were no other dietary or lifestyle modifications at all with that. So it was a pretty incredible finding. We are now doing a 90-day study to see, even the larger impact this will have on the gut. So we also are in the process of doing a study on glyphosates and Roundup, and how the initial findings are showing, that has not been published yet, but the initial findings are showing that these strains in Just Thrive are actually reversing the damage of Roundup in the gut. So pretty profound studies. So, everything we do is really based on research, and there's a lot of myths out there about probiotics, and we could get into that later. I'd love to talk about them. But when you mention that, are probiotics not helpful? And there is some truth to that, because there are a lot of probiotic strains that may not be really helpful to people. And in some cases can make the problem worse. But we are still at the cutting edge with gut health. We still are just at the tip of the iceberg, to find out where we're going with gut health. We know we're 10 times more bacteria than we are human cells. And so we need to be taking care of our bacterial cells first and foremost.
Absolutely. So this LPS, it's lipopolysaccharide, correct?
Yes.
How does that actually work in the body? Do you know what that is doing? Like what the mechanism is?
Well, it's a toxin. It's basically a toxin that really, we don't really like toxins, but the toxin it doesn't really become problematic in the gut. It's just when it gets into the bloodstream.
I see. Okay.
So it's essentially a toxin. It's a protein, but it's a toxic protein.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about gut health in general. If we think about like traditional health conditions and stuff, I think there are going to be some listeners that understand what leaky gut is. And then there's going to be some where I think this is completely new to them. So what I'd like to talk about is the idea of, like you said, the people that were studied in this study, it was a large number of them actually were shown to have leaky gut, correct?
Yeah, that's actually the scariest part. Is it was done, the study was done on college students, and they show that 55% of them had a leaky gut and didn't know it. Now, all of these students they had no symptoms. They weren't on any medication. They didn't have any issues, like any outward issues. But we found out that 55% of them actually had a leaky gut and didn't even know it. And then of the 55%, we sent half of them with the placebo and half of them with the strains and Just Thrive.
Wow. That's super interesting to me, because what'll happen is I'll get a lot of clients that come to me. Let's say they're like 30 years old and obese and dealing with like an autoimmune condition. And they'll say these things like, it's so strange. I never had a problem before. And now I'm 30. It's like, I woke up and my health is falling apart. And I'm like, well, those issues were probably there when you were like a college age kid, and the damage is just compounding, yes, year after year, getting worse and worse. So what would you say are some of the primary, I guess, offenders or like attackers of leaky gut?
Yeah. And you are so right. It is just this tiny little, like, it's like a slow drip, that's just, it just, and then one day it just hits you, bam, So some of the big offenders are, of course, stress. Stress is a huge offender on all of our health, but especially our gut health. I mean, there's the huge gut-brain connection, and it goes both ways, So if your gut is, not healthy, it causes you to have issues that go up to your brain. And then if your brain, if you're stressed all the time, then it causes problems in your gut. So stress is a big offender. Antibiotics are a huge offender. We all know, most of us try to avoid antibiotics, but people have grown up taking it for acne or taking it for other conditions where they're taking it every single day for, a year or two at a time. Antibiotics are definitely a huge offender of gut health, and antibiotics that are in our food. They're found in our food supply all the time. We know that, and that's why we all try to eat clean. Glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, huge offender. Here's what's so bad. Antibiotics actually, we know that they are killing the bad bacteria, which is why we, take them. And I never, of course, antibiotics save lives, and I would never suggest, don't take an antibiotic if it needs to save your life or anything like that. But we just have to be aware that we have to prepare our body if we do have to take them. But antibiotics will kill the bad bacteria, but we know that they also kill the good bacteria at the same time. Here's the scary thing about glyphosate. Glyphosate has been proven to only target the good bacteria. So they're only killing the good bacteria. They don't even kill the bad bacteria. So, eating clean is so important, so important. So I would say stress, antibiotic use, the toxins in our environment, glyphosate, Roundup, those are all huge offenders. The life we live, the world we live in right now, unfortunately, is very toxic. So all these things are wreaking havoc on our gut. And leaky gut, of course, is one of the biggest offenders of gut health.
Right. Absolutely. It's so true that it's like it's hitting us from all angles. Cause I know I'm really excited about this glyphosate study you're doing too. Cause I've heard things of even like they're finding pasture raised animals that have like glyphosate in their bones because the farmer doesn't realize there's glyphosate in the water supply.
Well,
You're
exactly.
like, what?
I know it's so bad what's happening with, what's out there. And I mean, everywhere we're going, we can't even the clean food, the organic food can't be 100% clean, because it's unfortunately the world we live in. I'm still blown away at how we ever got glyphosate, approved. I mean, but that's a whole other interview, right?
Yeah, that's the tinfoil hat. We start talking money and conspiracy, and it's not even conspiracy. It's like out there in the open. You're like, oh yes, this is public information. You know what I mean?
No, exactly.
It's so crazy, and I want to chat about, I guess the biggest, so gut health, for the people that don't know listening to this, there's going to be some Clovis people that are like super educated on this and know all about gut health and probably take Just Thrive and all that. But there's a lot of newbies that always come in and listen too. And I think I want to try to make a direct connection of what are some of the most common health conditions that you see people dealing with, because for people like you and us, that you and I that like kind of explore this, you'll see people that have been working in the conventional medicine paradigm with maybe some kind of autoimmune condition. And they've been on like multiple medications for 6 years with no end in sight. Like there's no improvement, no nothing, because they don't realize, or the doctor doesn't realize, that this is a direct issue connected to gut health. So what are some of these most common health issues you're seeing?
Well, I'll start with the most obvious, of course, when people have gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation.
Sure.
All of those things, GERD, those are all, and most people know that, if I'm having those symptoms, that means that I have a gut imbalance of some sort. But what people don't always realize is autoimmune issues. I mean, from rheumatoid arthritis to lupus to, any, eczema, psoriasis, all of those things are related to your gut health. Any skin issue, people go and they find some topical solution, which is fine, but you have to understand, why did that happen in the first place? And it really happened because there's an imbalance in the gut. Also, anxiety and depression. A lot of people aren't thinking anxiety and depression has any correlation to gut health. And it's a huge correlation. 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. And dopamine is also produced in our gut. So all these neurotransmitters are all, produced in our gut, and we need to be taking care of our gut health when it comes to all those types of conditions. But arthritis is another one, Alzheimer's, diabetes, all of these. And to be honest with you, it's hard to find any health condition that's not tied to gut health. I mean, it's really, really difficult. And that's why I always say it's like the number one thing you need to do on your health journey is to start with gut health.
Absolutely. That's what I try to tell people too with things like acne. And it seems so I guess it seems logical. Like, I have something on my skin, I'm going to treat this from the outside in. But what it basically is it's the external manifestation of systemic inflammation
Right.
within your body. And like you talk about Alzheimer's, diabetes, like they're calling, some people are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes right now. Like it's an inflammatory condition. And systemic inflammation, as you said, are things passing into the bloodstream, this autoimmune response. All of a sudden you have inflammation. And
Yep.
whenever I talk autoimmune, what I really want to get into, that I know that you talk a lot about as well, is children. This is just huge for me. It's like what I'm super passionate about. We talked about this a little bit on the island where we met, what got me into health and wellness with my niece and her condition. So I always try to tell parents that a lot of these issues, this behavioral issues and ADHD and this rise of autism and all that, I think that we have these kids nowadays that are being born, they're like essentially made of glass. Like, this is a transgenerational problem where I see the immune system weakening from our grandparents to our parents to us. And you hear these things where people are like, my parents grew up on peanut butter and jelly and they're just fine. And now these kids have ADHD and autism and they get the sniffles and they're on antibiotics and all this. It's like, you have to see that connection of how this is basically being passed down. It's like a transgenerational problem of weakening the immune system. So I want to talk about what your products do, what Just Thrive does in terms of strengthening the immune system. And then we can get into like how to use these with children as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Justin, because that is also another personal passion of mine. I feel so blessed every day that I was able to have these, have Just Thrive for my kids when they were now some of them are adults, but I've got teenagers. When we launched this, they were teenagers, and helping them with their acne and that kind of stuff. It was amazing. But I am so passionate about it because our kids these days are being brought up from the minute they're born, are exposed to all these toxins, and they're, they're growing up on glyphosate. They're growing up on all of the Roundup laden food, and nothing is pure and clean for them. And we see this, this rise in autism. We see the rise in ADHD, like you mentioned. And when I was a kid, and obviously I'm much older than you are, but I mean, when I was a child, I don't know anybody that had an allergy. Nobody in our class had an allergy. Nobody had autism. I didn't, you just didn't see it. And it's just rampant right now. And you see this all the time. So I'm always trying to tell parents, like, if there's one thing you could do for your child's gut is to take a high quality probiotic and to really take care of it and be very mindful of what you're giving your child. And that's the big offender is sugar. I mean, sugar is a huge offender, and our kids are being marketed, we know this, they're being marketed McDonald's, they're being marketed the sugar, all of that, the kids menus. I mean, why are there kids menus? There shouldn't be kids menus. The kids should be eating exactly what we're eating, if not better. But our kids it's such a higher risk for gut imbalance than we ever could be because of the world that we are now live in.
Yeah, there was a test I heard about, like they found like over 200 toxins or something in umbilical cords of women. Wow. And you're like, wait a minute, they're getting toxins like in utero. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. So yeah, as far as Just Thrive, absolutely recommend giving it to children. On the label, it says 3 and above because of choking hazards and that kind of stuff. But you could open the capsule and mix it with food. We are going to be launching a children's only, like a liquid formulation, but it won't be any different. The formulation won't be any different than the capsule that we have right now. But it's just that it's an easier delivery system. So these strains are perfectly fine to give to, children. And then even younger than 3, we would just say, open the capsule and use like a quarter of the capsule and give it to them. But really, really important for children, So
that's fantastic. I love that. And I love the safety thing of like, I joke about this. Well, one, I like that you cleared up the age 3.5 as a choking hazard. That makes a lot of sense, that why that age limit is there. That's super smart. And then I think about, I always kind of challenge parents with this because I'll have people that come get a Clovis nutrition plan from me, which is basically like, I teach people how to eat whole foods, right? Yeah. And you'll get these questions like, is this safe for children? And I'm like, wait, what? Like, did you not think of like a kid on acne? Like a parent will just gladly fill a prescription for something like Accutane, which carries a risk of suicide. And like
our doctor told them.
Exactly. It's like the same way that kids are marketed to with these food products. A lot of conventional medicine, and as you know, with a background in pharmaceuticals, that's marketing as well. They just market to the doctors to get the doctors to sell their product, you know?
Right. Yep, exactly. And
It's
and
like,
the other thing is, like you were saying, it's all whole foods. I mean, the strains in our product are the same strains our ancestors got from the environment. These are, that's what's so different about ours versus other conventional probiotics is these are the strains that our ancestors got on a daily basis. I mean, we're going back to the way our ancestors lived. You just eat off the land, and our roots and tubers had all of these organisms in the soil. And that's where we're going back to. I mean, we're not creating these in a lab. I mean, they're obviously being manufactured, but they are not created in a lab. These are strains that were originally found in the soil. So it's pretty incredible.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, logically, I just love clearing that up. It's like, okay, we're going to ask a question if Just Thrive probiotic is safe for kids when nobody ever asks if like goldfish and Doritos are safe for kids. Like, what are we doing? This is ridiculous. But so I did want to ask too, in terms of giving it to kids, because let's say you're popping open capsules and things like that. One thing I wanted to touch on that I thought was amazing about Just Thrive that I didn't realize until recently is the heat resistance. So if you were to add it to like hot foods or things like that, can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we studied these and we found out that they could actually withstand temperatures of 455 degrees. So you could bake with them if you find, low sugar cookie recipe or something. You could put them in whatever. You could put them in eggs in the morning. I mean, you could do whatever it is that you want to do, and just they totally remain stable in the presence of heat.
That's fantastic.
They even remain stable in the presence of an antibiotic. So that's another very interesting factoid about, if somebody has to be on an antibiotic, they know that's going to destroy their gut. We know that these strains will remain completely stable in the presence of an antibiotic. So pretty incredible.
That's unbelievable. I didn't know that till right now.
Yep.
That's crazy. Okay, so this is a great segue then, because I want to dig into, so particularly surrounding that, there's so many people that when they take an antibiotic, and I've actually done this myself and told people about it. And I want to get into some of the most common probiotic myths, because I